Welcome to Watches with Dennis, and today I'm reviewing the Orient Kanno, reference RA AA0915R19B. This watch is from my personal collection. It was a gift in new condition, and I've owned it approximately 1 week at this point. Orient is a brand under the ownership of Seiko, but it continues to produce watches under its own label and with its own design language. Generally speaking, Orient occupies the budget-friendly tier of the Seiko family. The Kanno, formerly spelled with just one N in the name, but now spelled with two, line of dive watches is most directly compared to what I would argue is the more popular line of Orient's Komatsu watches. Both exist around the same price point, with a few design differences, but the Kanno line is notable in that it is larger in diameter than the Komatsu. So let us take some measurements. The watch diameter is 44 millimeters. The watch lug-to-lug is 50 millimeters. The watch thickness is 13 millimeters, and the lug-to-lug is 22 millimeters. This watch offers 200 meters of water resistance. This reference features a sunburst red dial with white day and date windows at the 3 o'clock position. The hour and minute hands are a sword style and are well loomed, and the second hand features an arrow portion which also contains lume. There is a lume applied hour marker at all 12 positions of the watch, with the 3 o'clock marker being notably shorter than the rest to accommodate the date window. The 12 o'clock position actually has 2 markers side by side to help with orientation of the watch. The exterior portion of the dial just past where the applied indices are for the hour markers have a minute marker for every minute. Beneath the 12 o'clock marker is the Orient logo, followed by the name Orient, followed by the notation that the watch is an automatic in a scripted font. Above the 6 o'clock position in the scripted font, it says water resist, and then beneath that printed is the rating of 20 bar, or the 200 meters of water resistance. And below the 6 o'clock marker, you can make out some additional text in fine print that relates to the movement this watch uses. The day and date windows are not framed per se, but instead there's a printed horizontal line above and below them to sort of demarcate them separate from the rest of the dial. Under a loupe, I could see some debris on the dial, which is something I have come to expect, unfortunately, at this price point. But to the naked eye, it is difficult to detect, but that may be in part because of the sort of brilliant red sunburst that this dial has going for it. So I would just urge some caution, and that your mileage may vary on some other more conservative dial configurations where perhaps it would be easier to see debris. As this watch does feature lume, here is some footage of that lume freshly charged. The watch case itself is stainless steel, and the dial is protected by mineral glass. There is a bezel insert here made out of aluminum, and it features the familiar dive timing bezel format with a printed triangle and Arabic numerals at the 10, 20, 30, 40, and 50 positions. There is also a sort of hash mark every 5 minutes in between those as well. There is no lume at all on the bezel. There's not even lume in the triangle with a pip like we often see with dive watches. The bezel is unidirectional and does offer 120 clicks. The action is pretty good. It feels different and sounds different than other dive watches I've personally handled. I would compare this more to a ratchet, like the instrument to ratchet, than I would most other dive watches that I've experienced. Unfortunately, there is, as you can see, backplay at points in the bezel. So again, not too surprising given the price point, but just something to be aware of if that bothers you to factor that in. I know that the watch case is stainless steel, but so is the bracelet. Most of the surfaces involved on this watch are brushed, but there are instances of polishing. The sides of the case, for example, are polished, as are the sides of the bracelet. The bracelet uses a fairly straightforward clasp. The Orient logo is present on it. The bracelet's removable links are secured via cotter pins, and they were the easiest I've ever worked with to remove and reinsert. I don't know if that's just because I have a lot more experience now, or if these are just easier to take out and put in general, but It was a nice, pleasant surprise. All that said, the bracelet itself is not particularly impressive. Again, unsurprising given the price point on this watch. I personally will probably be swapping this over to a third-party NATO strap after I finish up this review, but I wanted to keep it on the stock bracelet for this purpose. The watch does have a screw-down crown. You can see the Orient logo is on it. The crown is positioned at the 3 o'clock position, and it is protected by crown guards. The crown has 4 positions, so we're currently in position 0, and that is when it is screwed in, and that offers us our maximum 200 meters of water resistance. If we unscrew the crown, it will pop out into position 1. This is where the watch can be wound. As such, pulling the crown out into position 2, we are able to control the day and the date. Rotating the crown clockwise controls the day, and you can see that it's available in both English and Spanish abbreviations as such. And then turning the crown counterclockwise allows you to change what the date is itself as such. Pulling the crown out again puts us into position 3, which is the 4th position because we started with 0. And this does allow the watch to hack. You can see the second hand has stopped moving, and now we are actually able to go and set the time of the watch. Push the crown back in, second hand starts running again, and screw it back down into position 0 to restore the water resistance and put the watch into the proper wearable condition. Flipping the watch over, you can see that it has a closed case back. The watch is powered by the F6922 automatic movement. That is an in-house movement developed by Orient. It is an automatic movement, so the watch does wind while you wear it. It beats at 3 Hertz, it has 22 joules, and it offers approximately 40 hours of power reserve. Putting this watch on my Timegrapher, I was able to get a reading across all 6 positions that averaged to plus 13 seconds per day. The range of my readings were as low as plus 3 seconds per day, all the way up to plus 22 seconds per day. Here's a look at the watch on my 6.75-inch wrist. And here's some additional footage of the watch on my wrist outside in natural lighting. So, what are my overall thoughts on this watch? I'd say the positives are it has a really nice red dial, it has great specifications for the price, and it features a very easy to use bezel. The negatives are it has a mineral glass crystal rather than sapphire, it has no lume at all on the bezel, it's not particularly great accuracy, and there is some contamination on the dial, but I must qualify that as it was really only noticeable under a loupe. These Kanno watches can be found under $200 new if you look around. As I noted at the start of my review, I view this and the Kamasu as reasonable watches to compare to each other given the similar pricing, similar design as dive watches, and both being built by Orient. The Kanno suffers for a few reasons. As a larger watch, I assume to keep the price down they gave up on the sapphire crystal for mineral glass because I believe the Kamasu does use sapphire. This, I think, is the biggest overall negative I have with the watch. However, the lack of any lume, even a little pip in the triangle, makes the practical value of this watch for diving a question to me. I am not personally a diver, so using the timing bezel for other purposes is in no way compromised for me by this design decision, hence why I was comfortable with the watch, as I was aware that it did not have lume on the bezel. But this really is the first time I have seen a watch that actually had diving specification, 200 meters of water resistance, and was completely devoid of lume on the bezel. I do find it unfortunate because, again, with 200 meters of water resistance, there's really no reason not to go swimming or diving with this watch on, but that may take it away versus some other watches that do offer that additional functionality. Those are the 2 main issues I have. I am dinging the watch slightly for being over 10 seconds a day off per average, but that is well within the specifications of this budget movement. The F6922 movement is spec'd to be between negative 15 seconds per day to plus 25 seconds per day. And to my knowledge, versus other similarly priced movements such as from Seiko or Miyota, this is a really strong range, a better range than we see from other manufacturers. Just be aware that you may need to set the time fairly regularly to recalibrate it to what the actual time is, even if you are wearing the watch all the time and keeping it wound. Likewise, the dial contamination. To me, this is not a big deal because it's not naked eye visible, and I only noticed it when I first looked under a loupe. I have incidentally had more expensive divers, I'm looking at you, Zodiac Super Seawolf, with a similar issue that come in at about 5 times this price point. But for a watch that is under $200, gives you 200 meters of water resistance, offers an automatic movement in-house, day and date features, a functional diving bezel, these are nothing to sneeze at. There's a lot of watch here for the price. Also, and I really hope my video was able to capture this in both this artificial lighting we're in right now and the natural lighting I shot it in, but the red dial and its sunburst effect is really quite incredible. I have not seen a red dial like this without going all the way up to Oris, which requires you to add about $1,000 more into your budget for consideration. Orient does offer other reference numbers of the Kanno with other colors as well for those that are perhaps looking for something more subdued than this red dial variant. Thank you for watching this review video. If you enjoyed the video, please give it a like as it helps the channel out. Subscribe if you'd like to be automatically notified when I release new videos. Thanks for watching and have a great day.